My name is Jean-Baptiste. I've been working in mostly on open source for now almost 20 years, a bit more. I've been working on this software called VLC Media Player, which is one of the most used video software. And I've been working on cloud video encoding for the past 15 years, being CTOs of several companies. And for the last 3 years, we transformed Scaleway, which was a hoster, into a true sovereign cloud provider based in Europe.
That's awesome. Sovereign cloud is obviously a big mega trend in the industry, particularly in Europe. You have a very interesting perspective here as a French national, somebody building this out of France for Europe. How's the experience been, and what does it take to build really a European sovereign cloud?
So the difficulty is that if you look at a cloud provider, it's a ton of products, right? And it's easy to do like just a pass, just a deployment stack, but being like full from bare metal to AI inference is a lot of scaling in terms of engineering, right? So one of the largest issues was to have multiple teams getting from 15 teams to 50 teams, right? 60 teams, building all the products and also being more repeatable because, of course, the market is a bit smaller here. So you don't have like billions and so you cannot hire so many people. So you need to be more efficient and more to the point. And one of the key things was based on my experience in open source is to work like open source and create everything from the ground up. Everything you deploy is something that you compile.
What do your customers care most about? Because, you know, there's a lot of folks that add a European region and call it sovereign. But I think your perspective is quite differentiated.
Because that SSH doesn't stop at borders, right? Like it's something that is AWS or GCP, like the person in the US can still access your data, right? And the problem with everything related to AI is that AI processes are in the core of your company, right? And you are managing the more valuable data that you have, right? Whether it's going to be CRM, clients, deals, or your secret products, right? And so the problem is that you need to have something where you build everything yourself and you can trust. And anytime you have something that is done by a foreign company, especially from the US, they have a lot of law, whether it's a Cloud Act, Patriot Act, or everything like FISA 702, is that legally they must hand off the data if they are compelled, and you cannot escape that, right? So even if they build something in Europe, that's the same thing.
Understood, yeah. What goes beyond, you know, the building? You were talking about hiring a lot of software engineers, building out the platform. When you look at your customer base today, what do they care in terms of the software layer on top? Is it a lot of like Kubernetes, inference endpoints, Slurm? What is the priority for customers?
What we're seeing is a multi-cloud strategy, right? They have already had something on GCP, on AWS, they want to move, right? And the thing is, there is no common APIs, right? The only things that are standard basically today are S3 for storage and Cube, right? Whether those are good technologies or not, this is not the debate. This is the default, right? At Scaleway, we built on that, right? So, of course, you see VMs and so on, but like migrating from VMware to AWS to Scaleway is difficult for VMs, right? Because everything has been customers. On containers, it's way more standard, right? So it's way easier to move. And as for inference as a service, like I think everyone has mimicked basically the OpenAI API. And so those are becoming the standard. So you follow the standard because this is how you help people to switch to something that is a local cloud provider.
You have a lot of experience in open source in your whole career. And, you know, we've seen a recent push, particularly from the side of NVIDIA, to open source a lot of software. How are you looking at this? Are you already embracing NVIDIA's DSX suite, for example? Tell us a little bit more about this, Stan.
Open source is going to eat everything that is infrastructure, right? Because de facto, the value is on the higher layer of the stack and the business is over there, right? So like, except if you're a very, very large provider and owning the stack will give you like huge amount of performance, most of the time, this is not the case, right? The whole industry has like common needs. And so everyone standardizes around open source. And so this is happening everywhere and will happen everywhere. On AI, it's still happening all around and no one knows exactly who's going to get out. So it's not the case. But when ChatGPT-2 arrived, it was just, it's done. No one can compete with them and so on. And then we had like competition. And then Llama came and it was just like, we all already have open weight. And today, right, we have a DeepSeek, we have a GLM, we have Mistral, and they're competitive, right? And this has changed. And in the end, a lot of models are going to be a commodity. And so if they are a commodity, they will become open source.
That makes sense. What do you think is a big priority in the whole industry? Do you see any bottlenecks, anything that requires us to, you know, put a more laser focus in the next couple of years?
I think there are a few things that are going to happen is that we're going still to see some large models and state-of-the-art models. But for a lot of tasks today, right, the models you have are good enough, right? And you have models which are even 7B or 31B that can run locally, do your OCR, do a ton of like small task integration. So what I see is that people are going to like have a different type of models for different type of use cases, and not like, oh, I only using that, right? And this is going to change first. Second thing is small models, right? Retrain or for a very specific case, right? And they're not just doing that, but that's good enough. And that means that you can run cheaply, because there is a lot of question of having access to RAM and hardware. And that's one of the things I see on models. The second trend I'm seeing is different type of hardware, right? Because I'm going to do some inference. Maybe I don't need the latest NVIDIA and the most expensive GPUs. And finally, a big business decision is that a lot of AI companies are not making any money while money is flowing in. And so the flow of money might slow down a bit to something, especially for startups, which is a bit more realistic and concrete and handled in reality. And this will change, yes, a bit. And the future of physical AI, right? Everything robots. I was at Machina yesterday. My new startup is focused on physical AI. This is where a lot of things are going to happen, because it has direct implication on real life.
What's next for Scaleway?
Grow, of course. There will be a ton of push on having something that is more balanced, especially because of the geopolitical issues, and not have everything from the US.
That makes a ton of sense.
How do you enjoy Paris?
I love to be here. Yeah, we're here for a work trip, but it's a lot of fun as well.
No, but that's quite interesting is that there are a ton of things related to AI in Paris, right? Whether it's Amilab, whether a lot of people behind Gemma, a lot of ZML, what we're doing at Kyber, a lot of things happening on, of course, Mistral and cloud providers, NeoCloud. A lot of things are happening, and that's quite a big shift, is that in Europe, the gravity pool is around Paris on AI, whether in the previous generation of startup, maybe it was more London or Berlin. So that's a big change. And we see that because there is a ton of conferences, whether it's Machina and Raise, whether it's AI Pulse, whether it's Adopt AI at the Grand Palais. Right? So there is a ton of things happening here. And we see that with also a ton of new investments in the Parisian European ecosystem. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think France has always been a breeding ground for infrastructure innovation.
Sure, but there was this lack of realism and business and I think it's very changing now.
That makes sense. Yeah, I remember the days of Docker when that became all the craze, also coming out of France.
Yeah, but Solomon was amazing. He's like Franco-American, and very soon he moved to the US. But yes, like Docker or Dataiku, Datadog were mostly done by French people, moved to the US. What we are seeing now is like engineers creating a very innovative company in Paris and staying in Paris. And that's I think the biggest thing that is going to happen in the next years on AI in Paris.
It's very exciting. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
It.